Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about, specifically, I want to talk about podcasting and why podcasts no longer matter, in my humble opinion, to the Dungeons and Dragons community. All right, so let's jump into this. So first of all, I'm a huge podcast fan previously, but no longer, and I have switched to YouTube. I listen to I listen to no podcasts at all anymore through podcast streamers. The one remaining podcast I had was Slate Political Gabfest, and that started releasing on YouTube. And so I just listen to everything on YouTube, and I also listen. So the podcasts that I cared about have been placed on YouTube at this point. And there's a lot of YouTube content that I listen to the way I used to listen to podcasts. Now, I will say this. I have YouTube, I think they've had a million names for it. YouTube Red, YouTube Premium. So I pay $10 a month to YouTube. And what that does is it allows me to turn off the screen on my phone, and I can still hear YouTube, and I get no ads, right? So I do want to be open about it, that's one of the reasons why. But this is profound. So I think the thing that really shocks me is people are like, oh, I'm listening to Spotify. And I'm like, why? Why are you, or they're like, I'm like, why are you still using a podcast catcher, right? And so this is the reason that I think, so podcasts did matter a lot to the D&D community for like 10 years, right? There were a ton of really important podcasts. I don't think there's any important podcasts anymore. I think podcast is an unnecessary medium. And I think the best way to understand what's happening is what I'm about to explain. This is the whole reason for the video. Here we go. Podcasts are finding American gold eagles in a garbage dump. That's what podcasts are, right? And YouTube is finding Benji wrapped American silver eagles in an open field. Okay, so let me explain this. So the reality is you could still get the best content on podcasts because there's geniuses there. They're literally people who are just absolutely brilliant and incredibly, and just like Dungeons and Dragons is a filter for charismatic, confident, intelligent, podcast is a filter for erudite, and podcast creators are extremely smart, right? But the problem is podcasts built this culture of garbage, right? And what is that? Well, you come on, you have a 2-hour podcast. I've seen 4-hour podcasts, just people just rambling on. And there's this thing of podcasts is you get in and you have a set audience. You don't introduce yourself. There's nothing like, there's no pinnings, right? And these people just ramble on about the weekend. They take their time to make the point. They're, I don't know if they're drinking. It seems like they're drinking. They're just meandering on a lemonade walk. It's meandering and it's slow. You could find $2,200 American gold eagles there, but you're in a garbage dump. It stinks, right? It is just 45 minutes of how, hey, tell me about your dog, right? On a politics podcast, it's just terrible, right? Because they built this meandering flow, right? And also this idea that podcaster listeners will listen to whatever the podcaster says. Whereas on YouTube, it's like, get to your point. I don't do videos over 20 minutes long. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but it's just the thing. I don't do it, right? But when you go on YouTube's like, you better have a point, you better have some focus, and you better get to it. I ain't listening to your dog. I ain't listening to your story about your weekend. Let's get to it, right? Like, and that is an American Silver Eagle. Now an American Gold Eagle is worth $2,200, right? An American Silver Eagle is worth $40. But it's wrapped in Benjamins, right? Like 3 to 5 Benjamins and rubber banded together, right? And so when you're on YouTube, you're not going to hear these hugely profound points the way you would on a podcast, but you don't have to sift through literally mounds of garbage. You don't have to get junk juice on your hands. You don't have to go through, used food wrappers, right? Podcasts are finding American Gold Eagles in a garbage dump. YouTube is finding Benjamin wrapped, $100 bill wrapped American Silver Eagles in an open field, right? You just go for a walk, you bend down, there's the American Silver Eagle, and it's wrapped with 1D3 Benjamins, right? Like 1D3 times 2 Benjamins, right? $200 to $600, right? And so it's just more useful. And I think people realize this, and I think at this point, it's done. There's nobody really who's wasting their time on podcasts at all, I think, in my humble opinion. That is my humble opinion. Well, every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.